Hey, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon. Welcome to another live stream edition of Unleashed the Podcast. I am really excited about today's guest. I'm going to introduce Garr Lange in just a few minutes, but I want to thank all of you for being here and watching. Whether you're watching live, you're listening later, I appreciate your support. In case you don't know already, you can subscribe, never miss an episode. Subscribe to Unleash the Podcast where you get your podcasts. It can be Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're ubiquitous. We're all over the place. So make sure that you subscribe. And if you're on the Facebook page, which I'm guessing you are because you're probably watching right now, you can watch all these live interviews like we're going to do with Garr in just a second. So please join us there as well. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about a cool new Patron membership we've got going, so you can even get better stuff later. But for right now, I've been waiting for this. I know many of you watching are friends of Garr Lange. Garr, first of all, welcome to Unleash the Podcast.
Touchdown, Danny. I've been waiting for this too.
So listen, Garr is an Oak Harbor guy just like me, and you are my first Oak Harbor, my first homeboy to be on the show. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's great. Of course, I know you from like when you were like 8 years old, so I think that's great too, because when we're rolling down this interview, I can always look at you sideways and go, "No, Danny, let's not go there."
Well, we might talk about some of those old days. And in fact, let me do a little bit of an introduction of you, so people who may not know you know why I have you here. Garr is the brother of one of my longest childhood friends, Ron. And I've known Garr. He's a little bit older than I am. So when I was 8, he was probably closer to about 18. But I'll never forget getting a cassette from Ron that said, "Hey, you know my brother Gary," because at the beginning it was Gary, and he said his name, he goes by Garr now.
2 R's.
2 R's. Yep, he goes by Garr now, and he's doing some music. Would you listen to this? It was Garr Lange and the Big Rig, and I'm going to tell you, I wore that cassette out. I want you to give everybody a little bit of a background of how you got into music, because at one point I think you were studying to become a lawyer. Next thing I know, you got a little bit of a country thing going on in your music. Talk about going from where you were in high school to college, and how did you get into music?
Well, I'd always been playing the guitar in my bedroom, but I wasn't playing the guitar doing other guys' songs or whatever. I was playing my own stuff, or trying to. And because of that, I wouldn't play my stuff for anybody else. I would just be playing my stuff, practicing. And so I didn't play in high school. And of course, I did the Oklahoma thing, and that was about the only time that anybody ever knew that I could sing. I didn't even know if I could sing. But then I went to college, and I was a writer. That was where my thing was at. But as I slowly, started realizing, I could throw lyrics together. It was something that I could do. And the Stanford Law School thing started going sideways, and I decided to go to New York City. And when I went to New York City, wrote a play with music. The play turned into, the William Morris Agency. So I got a representation for being a playwright with the William Morris Agency, and then I got at the same time, a representation for All Out Entertainment in Los Angeles for my music. So, I thought, heck, this is easy. I'm 24 years old, and man, I'm right up there with the big guys.
And this was like the mid 80s, right, Garr?
This is 82, 83.
Okay.
The play went up in 82, and that's where it all kind of springboarded. And then everything kind of fell apart. And then I thought, well, I'm going to go to Boston. I hear Boston's a great music town. Well, out of all of Boston, I end up in the apartment right below Mark Sutton. Mark Sutton is in Boston, everybody knows, is like the man when it comes to being a guitar player. I mean, he's right up there in the upper echelon. And lo and behold, he's listening to me down through the floorboards. And one day he knocks on my door and says, I want to listen to you. Okay, play. We got to get you in the studio. Well, who's going to do that? Me. So we go in the studio, do this 4-song demo. Everybody that was in the studio was his former band, the Rings, which were pretty famous in Boston. And we took that band out, and that became the Big Rig. And the Big Rig, we did pretty well.
You know, I don't know that I knew that story of how the Big Rig came about. So listen, you know, it's interesting that you said something that just caught my attention, that it was about the writing for you, that you'd always been a writer. I remember listening to that music, to that cassette, and Cry On Virginia, right? That was probably my favorite one that was my favorite song that I listened to. And I never thought of it as a listener of music. I just enjoy the music, right? What I didn't take into account was that you wrote this music. At what point in your life did you start saying, I want to write something? I hear these lyrics in my head, or whatever that came. How did that come about?
Well, in college, I wrote a song called Looking in My Baby's Eyes. And when I wrote that song, I realized, wait a minute, I can write a good song. And that was the first time I really had written what I considered was a good song. I always listened to singers and I listened to lyrics. When I listened to a song, you know, it was the arrangement, sure, but it was the singer and the lyrics that I really listened to when I listened to it. So, you know, that's where I gravitated to. And being a writer, you know, specifically, lyrics came pretty naturally to me. You know, a lot of singer-songwriters, they have difficulty with, you know, writing words to the page. That was never a difficulty for me. That was
so Garr, let me ask you this, because I remember from the movie 101 Dalmatians, the guy on the piano says, music first, lyrics second. Are you a lyrics first guy?
No, not at all.
So was he right then? The music comes first,
and write the lyrics to the grooves.
Okay,
that's what I did. That was primarily the way I did it.
Okay.
And I developed a way of playing that I could imagine a groove and then play the groove on the guitar, and it just wasn't, you know, your standard up and down kind of thing. I could actually lay out a groove, you know, and because of that, I think it developed a way of playing and of fitting lyrics inside the song, inside, you know, the tempos and so forth. So, you know, over time you get better at it. Over time you get to be a better singer, a better guitar player, and so forth. And I think the Big Rig was a big step for me. You know, I was thrown in with it was my first band really, and I was thrown in with really a bunch of all-stars, and I had to grow up really quickly. And after a while, I began writing more of a rock lyric and tempo, because I was writing for the band. Okay, let's do this thing. I was writing for these rock all-stars, you know, so we became more of a rock band as it progressed, and it was it was still country. You know, it was.
Well, I want to talk to you about Garr. I want to talk to you about that because I think I got your cassette. I must have been, it was 85, 86, somewhere in there probably that I got that. And I'm a rock and roll guy completely. And there was something about your singing. It sounded a little bit country, but it sounded a little bit raw. I'm not trying to do an Osmond thing. It was almost like you were ahead of your time because country music in the Garth Brooks era came started coming in about a decade later.
Right.
Talk about your sound in the 80s with the big rig and how was it accepted?
Well, we were not a country band. We were not a rock band. So when the majors came around, it was, where are we going to fit this thing? But they did come around. And however, my first major deal was from RCA out of Nashville, and they wanted me just as a singer, not as a songwriter and not with the band. And I said, no, I thought we had caught lightning in a bottle with the rig, because I thought we had a sound that I had never heard before. And I thought we could sell that sound. Well, it might have been an idiotic move, you know, looking back, but, you know, I stuck to my guns, and I felt like, you know, that was where we were headed. Couple years later, I got another offer. It was not for the band again. It was EMI and Manhattan Records out of New York, and they didn't know what to do with me. But I got the feeling that it wasn't going to be what I was doing with the rig. And again, I turned it down because I knew that, man, there was going to be something. And I signed this deal with Ruby Records, which was a major independent where we had some freedom to do what we were going to do. And that song that you listened to, Blue Windows, that was going to be our first song out of the blocks. And it was me. It was Garr Lange. It wasn't the rig. And but it was a rig tune that was modified by the Boston All-Stars, and that's where I was going with it. Mark Sutton produced it, and that's where we were. And if you listen to it now, you don't know if it's rock, it's country, you know, it's got this. But
well, it's a contemporary sound today, though, and it could have been written today.
You were 25 years before your time, bud.
So listen, I want to talk about Blue Windows. I'm looking at it right here as you put it on the Facebook page. So if you're on the Facebook page after you're done, check out, because he put it out here, Blue Windows, and there's a story here that I thought was fantastic. And as a songwriter, you're a storyteller. I want you to tell this story. Is this story that you wrote? Is that how this song came about?
Absolutely.
I want to hear the story. Tell everybody the story.
Well, when I landed in New York City in '80, I'm singing and I'm playing in a fifth floor walkout. Well, they're all kind of really close together, and I have kind of a booming kind of voice, and I play the guitar kind of loud. I couldn't really practice or sing inside the apartment. So I would go down on the corner and just wail. I would just, and one day I was wailing on the corner, and up pulls this limo, stops right in front of me, and I don't care. I mean, I've got people coming by me all day, and it doesn't bother me. Well, this limo stops, the driver gets out, goes into the deli behind me, and this window cracks open. And I just continue singing. Window cracks open a little more. The guy comes out of the deli, the driver, and gets into the car. And before he drives away, the window comes all the way down. I look into the window and it's Stevie Nicks. And she goes, "You sound great."
That's amazing.
I was like, okay, that's nice. And I thought, man, there's a song in there somewhere. And they go tootling on down the road, you know.
What a great story.
Stevie Nicks.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So listen, I love talking stories with you. We've had a chance to talk a little bit leading up to this. I want you to tell a story. I guess I'd forgotten. I went and saw you along with my date, who turned out to be my wife. I don't know if we were, I don't remember the year. So we were either dating or just married. We saw you at the Officers Club in Oak Harbor, Washington, both of our hometowns. I think that was that was kind of one of the local boy comes back home and plays the Officers Club. Talk a little bit about that. Tell a couple of the stories that you shared with me.
Oh yeah, that was it was about 87. And the rig had a couple of years under our belts, and we were coming back to do some shows in Seattle, and I thought, hey man, let's do a show in Oak Harbor. Yeah. And so my brother got a hold of the right people, and we're going to do a show in Oak Harbor. So he got a hold of a whole bunch of people and got a hold of the local newspaper, and they blew it up to, local boy comes home. And I was kind of embarrassed about that, but hey, great, all right, But 500 people show up at the Officers Club, and it's got a huge stage, 7 feet high, and the band is just tickled to death. We're in Garr's hometown. So I'm kind of nervous. First song out, we're going to come out, and Greg, who wrote up the set, said, hey, we're going to do Love Victims. First song out, Garr, you're going to stroll out there just strumming the guitar, and then we'll all filter in behind you, and it'll be great, a real showpiece. All right, okay. I'm nervous. I come walking out. I'm singing the song, and they come out at the chorus with a big boom, 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 boom. And they're all looking at me. I look over, and the girls are looking at me, and I'm, what's wrong with you guys? Bang, we come into the chorus, the band is all in, and the girls or whatever. And I started the song in A when I wrote the song in G. I'm the only guy that's way out of tune. Now, of course, I have a good enough band that could have followed me in A, but were they going to do it? No. You wrote the thing in G. We're going to stay in G, and you're out on a limb, bud. So I'm good enough where, okay, well, those first, oh, I was the only guy that was.
So tell me,
really terrible.
Tell me, what is, as you look back on your career and in playing different venues, what's the highlight? What's your favorite?
Wow, we did a show. Boston Cablevision asked the big rig to do a show for Cablevision, and it was an hour and a half show at the Hat Shell. And the Hat Shell is where the Boston Pop plays in the summertime in the Shell, on the Charles River. And they chose us to film the show, record the show, hour and a half, brought in all the cameras, brought in everything. And I have it on videotape here, and I should get it on CD someday. And it was a really good show. And it was a real honor for us to do something like that. And as I remember, they played it, in steady rotation for a couple of years. And every time it came on, I was like, we were a pretty good band, Look at that. We were pretty.
You should get that. You should dig that out. Hey, listen, I want to make a little bit of a transition. We talked a lot about music, and my podcast is about the intersection of business and life. And one of the reasons I really want to have you on, because you're an artist, and I've long been a believer that living a fulfilled life means that there's some well-roundedness to it. And I've known too many people in my life, whether it's business or something else, where their total focus tends to go there. I'm only gonna read self-help books, or I'm only gonna do this. And I know that in the years that I was on the school board, how important art and the arts in general are. Can you talk a little bit, kind of maybe at a 35,000 foot level, about the importance of arts, regardless of whether it's music or dance or whatever it is? Talk about the importance of arts when it comes to life.
Well, I started out primarily as a playwright. I was a playwright, and I also continued on as a playwright. Even when I was in Boston, I had plays up at the Beau Shakes and Beau Shakespeare Theater, and then had a premiere at the Renegade Theater in Hoboken, New Jersey. And that was a very important part of my life, just as much as the music. And I was doing both at the same time, and I realized at one point it was getting a little ridiculous, because there was only so much time. And so I chose to do the music. But there was always a part of me that said, you're cheating yourself. You're cheating yourself, because you owe yourself, because you can write. You can write a play. You can write a novel. You can. Is this all you're going to do for the rest of your life? Because, it's the expression of the soul that enables you to do what you do. It's the expression of the soul that makes painters paint. It's the expression of the soul that makes a singer sing. Now, that expression of soul, if you only choose one genre, just for me, that's only a part of the soul. The other part of the soul is this expression, because it's a whole nother genre. For me to write a play is a whole nother expression than writing a song, or it's a whole nother expression than writing a novel. However, it's the totality of that gives me fulfillment. And in turn, I feel that if I fulfill myself, I have something to offer somebody else. I feel that they can read my plays, they can listen to my music, they can read my novels, and in there, that is going to offer them something too. They're going to find some light. And if I'm only going to write for myself, how selfish is that? How selfish is that? No, you have to write for yourself and have enough confidence that somebody else, you're writing for others too, aren't you? And that's where art is, the connection between you and the others.
So you just mentioned your writing as well, in whether it be a novel or a playwright. If I saw correctly, you just started writing a blog. Talk about the blog.
The blog. Actually, I wrote some pieces in 2009 that were just funny little dash-offs that were about 500 to 1,000 words. And I thought, and I didn't do anything with them, but I had created a voice. And I'm all about voice when I write. I mean, this voice creates this kind of thing. This voice creates another kind of thing. And I ended up writing about 20 pieces. And I felt, now, why don't I turn those into a blog? And so now I finally have a mechanism. I have a Facebook that leads to a blog site that where people can actually go to and say, oh, well, there is the marriage of my blog and music and so forth, that gives the total picture, not just, me as a musician or me as a, hopefully when I get done, there's a culture around what I do. And that is, as a playwright, as a blogger, as a novelist, as a musician, as a, all that.
So that leads me to a question that what are you focused on now? Are you still I'm assuming you're still writing songs. Are you still singing? Are you still performing? What is the focus of Garr Lange here in the end of 2020 moving forward into the 2020s?
I just finished a novel that I wrote in 3 months, and it's a novel that I had been thinking about since 1982. And I just had it in the back of my mind. And finally, I just sat down and said, okay, you're going to write this thing. And I just wrote it. And I since have sent off the manuscript to a few people that I trust who are, writers and so forth. And I didn't touch it. I didn't, usually I'm a big stickler on rewriting. And I thought with this one, I'm just not going to touch it. And it's the first novel that I had written since 1988. But I had rewritten this one that I had written in 1988 a few times, about 5 times. But I figured the prose right now is biggest in my mind. The prose, write the novels, publish the novels, get those things out, because I feel just as confident that I have something to offer in that respect. However, I have 60 recordings from the rig that are just sitting there doing nobody no good. And Greg McCleary is remastering a bunch of them. And I think we'll put together probably 12 or 14 or so in the next year and release it as an album. Because I think there are some good recordings there. And I think, they're sitting on a shelf somewhere doing nobody no good, and I have since written 3 or 4 plays that are sitting in my computer doing nobody no good. So, I'm going to be 65 next year. I just felt it was time, it's time for me to get some of this stuff out.
Well, I am really glad to hear that. So listen, we could talk forever. I'm hoping that you'll come back on, when these get released, we'll talk again. For those people watching or listening right now, how do they become part of the Garr Lange the Garr Lange community? How do they find you?
Well, first and foremost, just go to Facebook. You'll find me as Garr Lange, and there's not too many Garr Langes out there, thank God. So go on Facebook, you're going to find Garr Lange. I do have a blog at deadlevel.club that you would have to stick in your browser to get to it. It's off of WordPress, and I haven't developed my website yet because I don't know what exactly I'm gonna and how I'm gonna do it. So, and plus I'm not real good at that, so I'll probably have to hire somebody to do that. But if you go to Facebook, that will kind of be the thing where I will channel everything from here on out, I think.
Well, Garr, thank you. And I'm going to use this time to plug. I'm launching a Patron site, and I know that Garr talks about the importance of patrons and supporting. I encourage all of you. I'm not going to go into it too long here, but if you go to unleashedthepodcast.com, I've got 3 different levels of membership, starting for as low as $5 a month. That gets you some bonus episodes. I've already got some of those cooked up for January. You get some behind the scenes videos, and I'm going to ask Garr for some of this later. I've got some guest resources that are unique and exclusive for members. So I hope you'll take a look at the Patron membership and choose to support and not only support, but get something additional in return. So Garr, you have to think about what you'll put in for the guest resources. So everybody listen, thank you for joining today. Again, unleashthepodcast.com. You can subscribe, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music. I forgot some, Apple Podcasts. That's where I listen. So Apple Podcasts as well. Thanks, Garr Lange. This was a blast. I'll hope to have you back again. Thanks to all of you new members. And for right now, certainly as we dive into December, be well, be healthy, be safe, and above all, be unleashed.